The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They sent signals into the darkness. They've built telescopes and satellites. They dreamed of meeting other beings who shared the universe with them. They should have been more careful about what they wished for. The Vaulat Empire had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They were beautiful creatures made of light and crystal, and they believed themselves to be perfect. They had conquered 300 species across 9 spiral arms of the Milky Way. Some species they absorbed into their empire as slaves. Others they simply erased from existence. They had never met a species they could not break. When their long-range sensors detected a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, they were not impressed. The planet was covered in water and filled with primitive life forms. The dominant species had only recently discovered how to leave their own atmosphere. They had not even spread beyond their own solar system. Ambassador Torek of the Vaulat Empire was given the simple task of adding this world to their collection. He took 40 warships with him, which was considered excessive for such a primitive civilization. But Torek liked to make an impression. The ships arrived in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Park Do-yeon of the United Earth Defense Fleet received the transmission on his flagship, the Bichu. He was 53 years old, with gray hair at his temples and calm eyes that had seen too many battles. Beside him stood Commander Lee Yuna, his tactical officer. She was 38, brilliant, and absolutely fearless. The alien message was translated by their AI system. Ambassador Torek appeared on their screens, his crystalline body glowing with what he probably thought was impressive light. "People of Earth," Torek announced, "you have been chosen for a great honor. The Vaulat Empire offers you the privilege of serving our glorious civilization. You will surrender your planet, your resources, and your people to our control. In exchange, we will allow you to exist." Admiral Do-yeon said nothing. He simply waited. Torek continued, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You have 100 cycles to accept our generous offer. If you refuse, we will take your world by force. You cannot resist us. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are toys. Your species is young and weak. You are nothing compared to the might of the Vaulat Empire." Commander Yuna leaned close to the Admiral. "Sir, should I respond?" Do-yeon shook his head slowly. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. Every military leader on Earth had been trained for the possibility of hostile first contact. They had run simulations. They had built secret weapons. They had prepared for the worst, but hearing it actually happen was different. Knowing that these aliens saw humanity as insects to be crushed filled him with a cold anger he had never felt before. "Tell them," Do-yeon said quietly, "that Earth declines their offer." The message was sent. Ambassador Torek laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Foolish creatures. You do not understand what you are facing. We have destroyed civilizations that were ancient when your species was still living in caves. You cannot win." "Perhaps," Do-yeon replied, "but we will fight anyway." Torek's laughter stopped. For a moment, something like confusion crossed his crystalline face. In 12,000 years, no species had ever responded to their ultimatum with such calm defiance. "You will regret this," Torek said finally. "When we return, there will be no mercy." The alien fleet departed, leaving behind a countdown to destruction. They did not notice the tiny probes that had attached to their ships, recording everything and transmitting it back to Earth. On the ground, in a bunker hidden beneath the mountains of Korea, Defense Minister Choi Soo-min called an emergency meeting. She was 61 years old, with silver hair and steel in her spine. She had survived 3 wars before this one, and she had no intention of losing the 4th. The bunker was filled with generals, scientists, and political leaders from every nation on Earth, for the first time in human history. There were no disagreements between countries. There was only humanity, united against a common threat. "They made 3 mistakes," Minister Choi said, her voice cutting through the silence. "First, they told us exactly how long we have. Second, they showed us their ships and their weapons. Third, and most importantly, they underestimated us." She activated a holographic display showing the alien vessels. Her technical teams had already identified 17 structural weaknesses for possible points of attack, and 2 critical systems that could be disabled with the right weapons. They think we are primitive because we have not left our solar system, she continued. They do not know why we stayed. They do not know what we have been building. Dr. Beek Ji Woo, chief of the Advanced Weapons Division, stepped forward. He was a thin man with thick glasses and hands that never stopped moving. He had spent 30 years developing weapons that he hoped would never be used. The Genesis Protocol is ready, he said. We have been preparing for hostile first contact since 1975. Underground shipyards on Mars, hidden bases in the asteroid belt, weapons platforms on the moons of Jupiter. We have 4,000 warships ready to launch, each one designed to fight enemies exactly like this. A murmur went through the room. Most of the people present had not known about the Genesis Protocol. It had been the most closely guarded secret in human history. General Oh Sang-woo, commander of ground forces, spoke up. 4,000 ships. How is that possible? Our public space program could barely maintain a station in orbit. Minister Choi smiled, and there was something fierce in that smile. The public program was a distraction. Every major nation has been contributing to this project for 50 years. We did not know when the threat would come or what form it would take, but we knew it would come eventually. Humanity has always known that the universe is not a safe place. She looked around the room at the faces of Earth's defenders. Some were afraid. Some were angry. All of them were determined. We have 100 days, she said. 100 days to finalize our preparations, position our fleet, and show these aliens what humanity is capable of. They think they are coming to conquer a primitive world. They have no idea that they just declared war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Admiral Do-yeon, watching the meeting from his ship in orbit, felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Not the hope that they would survive without cost. He knew that many would die in the coming battle, but hope that humanity would endure, that his children and grandchildren would still have a home when the fighting was over. He looked out at the stars, at the direction the alien fleet had gone, and made a silent promise. They would come back. And when they did, they would learn what happened to those who threatened Earth. They would learn to fear. For 99 days, Earth went silent. The cities emptied as people moved underground. Satellites went dark. Radio signals stopped. From space, the blue planet looked abandoned, as if humanity had simply given up and hidden, to wait for death. The Vaulat observers reported this to their commanders with satisfaction. The humans are behaving as expected, they said. They have retreated into their holes like frightened animals. They know resistance is useless. Ambassador Torek was pleased. He had added 17 worlds to the Empire, and none of them had given him any trouble. This world would be no different. The humans would surrender, and he would be rewarded with a promotion. On the 100th day, the Vaulat Armada entered Earth's solar system. 400 warships, 10 times the original force, arranged in perfect formation. Their crystalline hulls caught the light of the distant sun and sparkled like diamonds. It was a display of overwhelming power, designed to crush any remaining hope the humans might have. Admiral Torek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Light, and smiled. "Begin the approach," he ordered. "Let us collect our prize." The fleet moved toward Earth with supreme confidence. They passed Mars without concern. They passed the asteroid belt without caution. They were so certain of their victory that they did not bother to scan for threats. This was their final mistake. Kim Tae-hee was 26 years old, the youngest cyber warfare specialist in Earth's history, and she had spent the last 100 days living on coffee and determination. Her team had studied the alien communication systems using data from the probes attached to their ships. They had found weaknesses. They had built weapons. "Ready to deploy?" she reported to Admiral Do-yeon. "Do it," he replied. The virus was elegant in its simplicity. It slipped through the Vaulat quantum networks like water through cracks in stone. Within seconds, it had mapped their entire communication system. Within minutes, it had reached their navigation computers. Within an hour, it had spread to every ship in the fleet. On the eternal light, Admiral Torik's smile disappeared as his ship began to drift off course. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Why are we changing direction?" His officers scrambled at their controls, but nothing responded. The beautiful crystalline interfaces flickered and died. Emergency lights filled the bridge with an ugly red glow. "Sir," one officer reported, his voice shaking, "we have lost control of navigation. All ships are affected. We cannot determine the source of the malfunction." Torik felt something he had not felt in a very long time: fear. Then the second wave arrived. From the asteroid belt, from the moons of Jupiter. From hidden bases on Mars and beneath the surface of Luna, humanity's true fleet emerged. Not 40 ships. Not 400. 4,000 vessels poured into space, their engines burning like stars, their weapons charged and ready. Admiral Park Do-yeon stood on the bridge of the indomitable humanity's flagship. It was 3 times the size of any Vaulat vessel, armored with materials the aliens had never seen. Armed with weapons they could not understand. Beside him, Commander Lee Yuna was smiling for the first time in 100 days. "All ships," Do-yeon said. His voice calm and steady, "engage the enemy." The battle that followed would be remembered for 1,000 years. The Vaulat had never faced an enemy like humanity. Their tactics were based on elegant maneuvers and formal engagements. They expected their enemies to follow rules, to retreat when outmatched, to surrender when defeat was certain. Humans did none of these things, Captain. Han Minho commanded the destroyer Gwangju. His ship was hit in the first minutes of battle, its engines destroyed, its weapons failing. Any rational commander would have ordered an evacuation. Han Minho was not interested in being rational. "All hands, abandon ship," he ordered. Then, when his crew was safely away, he turned his crippled vessel toward the nearest Vaulat carrier. The Gwangju was small, barely 1/10 the size of the enemy ship. But it still had one weapon left, for my daughter, Han Minho said as he triggered the reactor overload. The explosion tore through the carrier's hull like paper. 2,000 Vaulat died in an instant. Han Minho's name became the first on a very long list of human heroes. Pilot. Shin Yunji was 24 years old and had dreamed of flying since she was a child. When her fighter was damaged beyond repair, she did not eject. She aimed her burning craft at the enemy flagship's bridge and pushed her engines to maximum. The eternal light lost its command center. Admiral Turek survived, but he would never command again. The image of a small human fighter, trailing fire like a comet, heading straight toward him without hesitation, would haunt his dreams forever. Across the battlefield, humans fought with a ferocity the Vaulat could not comprehend. Ships that should have retreated pressed forward. Pilots who should have ejected stayed at their controls. Soldiers who should have surrendered fought until their last breath. Commander Lee Yuna coordinated the battle from the Indomitable's tactical center. Her voice never wavered, even as she watched the casualty reports climb. Squadron 7, target their fuel lines. Squadron 12, cover the evacuation of the Daegu. All medical ships, priority rescue at coordinates 4-7-9. She saved thousands of lives that day. She would never forget the ones she could not save. 6 hours after it began, the battle ended. 362 Vaulat warships had been destroyed. 38 had surrendered. None had escaped. Humanity lost 2,000 ships and 18,000 lives. Every name was recorded. Every sacrifice would be remembered. Admiral Do-yeon stood on his bridge, looking out at the debris field that had once been an invading fleet. He felt no joy. Only exhaustion and grief and a cold determination. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All frequencies. I want the entire galaxy to hear this." Communication officers worked quickly. Within minutes, Do-yeon's words were being transmitted across the stars. "To the Vaulat Empire and all who serve them," he said, "you came to our world with threats. You promised to take our home, our freedom, and our future. You believed we were weak because we were young. You were wrong." He paused, letting the words sink in. We have preserved your survivors so they can deliver a message to your masters. Tell them what happened here. Tell them what humanity does when our children are threatened. Tell them that we are no longer content to wait in our small corner of the galaxy. His voice hardened into steel. Tell them we are coming, and we do not forgive. The message echoed across the stars. In the great halls of the Vaulat Empire, leaders watched in horror. In the slave quarters of 100 conquered worlds, oppressed species listened with growing hope. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had announced its presence, and the universe had learned to be afraid. The recording spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every species, every world, every outpost saw the same images. 400 Vaulat warships, the pride of an empire that had ruled for 12,000 years, reduced to burning wreckage by a species no one had ever heard of, in the great council halls of the Vaulat capital world. Chancellor Morath watched the footage for the 7th time. He could not believe what he was seeing. He refused to believe it. "This is impossible," he said, his crystalline body flickering with agitation. "They are primitives. They have no history. They have no advanced technology. How could they destroy our fleet?" Scholar Felix stood quietly in the corner. She was the Empire's greatest expert on alien species, having studied hundreds of civilizations over her long career. She had watched species rise and fall. She had documented their extinctions with academic detachment, but she had never seen anything like this. "Chancellor," she said carefully, "I believe we made a serious error in our assessment of humanity." Morath turned to her with fury in his eyes. "Error? We sent 400 ships, our finest commanders, our most advanced weapons, and these primitives destroyed them in 6 hours." "Yes," Felix said, "and I think I understand why." She activated the holographic display and began showing images she had gathered from human transmissions. Pictures of Earth, its history, its people. "Humans evolved on a death world," she explained. "Their planet is one of the most hostile environments we have ever documented. 70% of the surface is covered in a corrosive liquid they call water. Their atmosphere contains a highly reactive gas called oxygen that causes constant cellular damage. Their star bombards them with radiation that would kill most species within days." The council members shifted uncomfortably. They had heard of death worlds, but they were rare. Most species evolved on peaceful planets with stable climates and abundant resources. "It gets worse," Felix continued. "Their planet is filled with predators, parasites, and natural disasters. Earthquakes that destroy cities. Storms that flatten entire regions. Volcanic eruptions that block out their sun. In any given year, dozens of natural events threaten to wipe out their entire species." She showed images of Earth's wildlife. Sharks with rows of razor teeth. Venomous snakes. Insects that carried deadly diseases. Even their plants were dangerous, producing poisons and toxins to protect themselves. "Humans did not evolve in safety," Felix said. "They evolved in a constant war for survival. Every generation faced extinction. Every individual learned to fight from birth." Chancellor Morath waved his hand dismissively. "Many species face hardship. It does not make them warriors." "No," Felix agreed. "But humans did something no other species has done. They did not just survive their hostile world. They conquered it. They hunted their predators to extinction. They drained swamps and tamed rivers. They split atoms and reached for the stars. And they did all of this while fighting each other." She showed the next set of images, and the council fell silent. Human history. Wars. Countless wars. Empires rising and falling. Weapons evolving from stone axes to nuclear bombs. Billions of humans killing each other over resources, territory, ideology, and sometimes for no reason at all. "Humans have never known peace," Felix said quietly. "Their entire existence has been a war. They have spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. They have developed weapons for every situation, tactics for every enemy. They have turned chemistry, biology, physics, and psychology into instruments of death." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. And they have done all of this to each other. Imagine what they will do to us. On the slave worlds of the Vallani Empire, footage had a very different effect. The Vorthok had been warriors once, 1,200 years ago. They had fought the Vallani with everything they had and lost. Their weapons were confiscated. Their culture was suppressed. Their children were taught that resistance was futile. But now, watching the human ships tear through the Vallani fleet, something stirred in their ancient blood. Korath was old for a Vorthok, nearly 80 years. He had been a child when the last rebellion was crushed. He remembered his father being executed for teaching him the old fighting songs. Now, in the darkness of the mining tunnels, where his people were forced to work, he gathered them together and showed them the recordings. "Look," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Look at what these humans have done. They are younger than us, smaller than us. They had fewer ships and less experience, and they won." A young Vorthok named Brannick spoke up. "The Vallani are still powerful. They will crush these humans eventually." Perhaps Korath said, or perhaps not, but that is not the point. He looked at his people, at the chains on their wrists and the hopelessness in their eyes. The point is that someone fought back. Someone refused to surrender. Someone showed the galaxy that the Vallani can be beaten. He raised his fist, a gesture that had been forbidden for 700 years. We forgot what it meant to be Vorthok. We forgot our warrior spirit. These humans have reminded us. When the time comes, we will join them. We will fight, and we will be free. Out. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The Malorians, a species of scientists who had been enslaved for their technological knowledge, began sabotaging Vallani equipment. The Synthri telepaths who had been forced to serve as interrogators started feeding false information to their masters. The Kronok, the Veloci, the Tarn, and dozens of other conquered species looked at humanity and saw something they had lost centuries ago: hope on Earth. The celebration was muted. Defense Minister Choi Soo-min addressed the unified government in the same bunker where the war had been planned. "We won the first battle," she said, "but the war has just begun. The Vallani Empire spans hundreds of worlds. They have thousands of ships still in service. They will come for us again with everything they have." The room was quiet. Everyone knew she was right. "But we have something they did not expect," she continued. "We have time, and we have allies." She activated the holographic display, showing messages that had been received from across the galaxy. Encrypted transmissions from Vorthok mining worlds. Scientific data from Malorian research stations. Intelligence reports from Synthri agents. Dozens of species reaching out in secret, offering their help. "The Vallani Empire is built on fear," Minister Choi said. "They have kept hundreds of species enslaved for thousands of years by making them believe resistance is impossible. We have shown them that it is not." She looked around the room with fire in her eyes. "We are not just fighting for Earth anymore. We are fighting for everyone the Vallani have ever crushed. We are fighting for the galaxy." Dr. Beek Ji-woo stepped forward. The Genesis Protocol was Phase 1. Phase 2 is Operation Prometheus. We have captured Vallani ships. We have their faster-than-light technology. Give us 6 months, and we will have a fleet that can reach their core worlds. Admiral Do-yoon, still recovering from the battle, spoke from his hospital bed via video link. "We will need more than ships. We will need soldiers, pilots, engineers, doctors. We will need every human who is willing to fight." Minister Choi nodded. "Then we ask them. We tell them the truth about what we face and what is at stake. We let them choose." The message went out across Earth that night. It explained everything. The alien threat. The secret preparations. The battle that had been won and the war that was coming. It asked for volunteers. By morning, 3 billion people had answered the call. Humanity was going to war, and the galaxy would never be the same. 1 year after the first battle, humanity was no longer trapped in its home system. The captured Vallani ships had provided the secret to faster-than-light travel. Human engineers, led by the brilliant Dr. Yoon Heron, had not only copied the technology but improved it. The alien drives are elegant, Dr. Yoon explained to the military council. They are designed for comfortable travel between friendly worlds, smooth transitions, minimal stress on the crew, predictable arrival times. She smiled, and there was something dangerous in that smile. Our drives are different. We built them for war. The Hammer of Dawn was humanity's first warship equipped with the new technology. It was ugly by Vaulat standards, all sharp angles and heavy armor, bristling with weapons. It had no elegant curves or beautiful crystalline surfaces. It looked exactly like what it was, a weapon. Admiral Park Do-yeon commanded the assault fleet from the Indomitable II. Rebuilt from the wreckage of its predecessor, and twice as powerful. His hair had gone completely gray in the past year, but his eyes were sharper than ever. First target is Korvax Prime, he announced to his commanders. It is a Vaulat military installation at the edge of their territory. Intelligence suggests they have minimal defenses. They do not expect us to strike so far from Earth. Commander Leuna, now promoted to Admiral herself, studied the tactical display. They expect us to defend our home system. They think we are too afraid to attack, and we will teach them otherwise, Do-yeon said. The fleet jumped. The sensation was strange, like falling through cold water. One moment they were orbiting Earth, the next they were light years away, merging from nothing into the heart of enemy territory. The Vaulat at Korvax Prime had expected months of warning before any attack. Their sensors could detect ships approaching through normal space days in advance. They had time to prepare, to call for reinforcements, to evacuate valuable personnel. They had no time at all when the human fleet appeared without warning. They are hailing us, reported on Jisoo. The intelligence officer who had spent the past year learning every alien language she could find. The station commander demands to know how we arrived without warning. Do-yeon leaned forward. Tell him that humans do not give warnings. The battle was swift and brutal. The station fell within hours. And when it was over, Do-yeon did something that shocked the surviving Vaulat. He offered mercy. Your soldiers may return home, he announced to the prisoners. Your wounded will be treated. Your dead will be honored. We are not here to conquer. We are here to end the Empire's reign. Join us, or stand aside. But do not fight us again. Next time, we will not be so generous. Word spread quickly. The humans were not like the Vaulat. They did not enslave their defeated enemies. They did not execute prisoners. They offered a choice. The Vorthok were the first to ally with humanity officially. Korath, now recognized as the leader of his people's liberation movement, traveled to Earth with a delegation of warriors. He stood before the United Earth Council, a massive figure covered in scars, and spoke words that echoed through history. For 700 years my people have been slaves. We forgot what it meant to fight. We forgot what it meant to be free. We forgot who we were. He looked at the human leaders with something like reverence. You reminded us. Your victory showed us that the Vaulat are not gods. They can bleed. They can die. They can lose. He drew a blade from his belt, ancient and curved, the last weapon of his ancestors. He placed it on the table before the council. Our blades are yours. Our ships are yours. Our lives are yours. Until the last Vaulat soldier is defeated, the Vorthok stand with humanity. The alliance grew quickly after that. The Malorians joined, bringing their scientific knowledge and technical expertise. The Syntheri joined, offering their telepathic abilities for intelligence gathering. The Kronak, the Veloci, the Tarn, and a dozen other species pledged their support. Colonel Bae Ji-hoon led the ground campaigns. He was 41 years old, scarred from countless battles, and absolutely devoted to his soldiers. His reputation had three parts. First, his tactical brilliance. Second, his unwavering loyalty. Third, his most famous rule. Leave no one behind, he told his troops before every mission. Not our people, not theirs. Everyone deserves a chance to come home. Lieutenant Kwan Nari was his second in command. She kept a list. Every soldier who had fallen under her command, every family she had written to, every name she would carry until the day she died. on the planet Verlox. Colonel Bay led the liberation of a Malorian research facility. 3,000 scientists had been imprisoned there for decades, forced to develop weapons for the Empire. When his troops breached the walls, they expected to find broken, hopeless creatures. Instead, they found warriors. The Malorians had been secretly sabotaging their own work for years. The weapons they had built contained hidden flaws. The ships they had designed had weaknesses only they knew about. They had been fighting their own quiet war, waiting for someone to come. We knew their leader. An old scientist named Relin told Colonel Bay, "We knew that someday someone would challenge the Empire. We prepared. We waited. And now you are here." The campaign continued for months. World after world fell to the human-led alliance. The Vaulat tried to respond, but they were fighting something they could not understand. Humans did not follow the rules of war. They attacked without warning. They retreated when it suited them, and pressed forward when all logic said they should retreat. They made alliances with species that hated each other. They showed mercy to enemies, and then struck without hesitation at those who refused to surrender. Chancellor Morith called emergency session after emergency session. But nothing worked. "They have been a spacefaring species for 1 year," he shouted at his admirals. 1 year, and they have already taken a quarter of our territory. How is this possible? Scholar Vilix, still alive and still watching, answered quietly from her corner. "I told you, Chancellor. They never stop. They never forget. They never forgive." Shh, she paused. "And they are very, very good at war." On the front lines, humanity pushed deeper into Vaulat space. Every victory cost them. Soldiers died. Ships were destroyed. Families received messages that their loved ones would not be coming home, but they did not stop. They could not stop, because every world they liberated showed them why they were fighting. Slaves freed after centuries of bondage. Children who had never known anything but chains. Species that had forgotten their own names, their own histories, their own songs. Admiral Doan stood on the bridge of his ship, looking at the stars they had claimed and the stars that remained. "We are winning, Commander," Una said quietly. "We are," Doan agreed. "But the hardest part is still ahead. The Vaulat capital is heavily defended. They will throw everything they have at us." Una nodded. "Then we throw everything we have at them. That is what humans do." Doan allowed himself a small smile. That is exactly what humans do. The final battle was approaching, and humanity was ready. 2 years after the Vaulat first threatened Earth, humanity stood at the gates of their capital world. The fleet that gathered in the darkness of space was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human warships flew in formation with Vorthok battlecruisers and Malorian science vessels. Synthary telepaths coordinated movements across thousands of ships. Kronak fighters darted between the larger vessels, like silver fish. Representatives from 20 different species had come together for this moment. At the center of the armada floated the Eternal Dawn, the largest ship ever constructed. It had been built in orbit above Earth by the combined efforts of all allied species. Its hull was kilometers long. Its weapons could crack planets. Its engines burned with the light of captured stars. Fleet Admiral Park Do-yeon stood on its bridge. He was 65 years old now, his hair white as snow, his body tired from years of war. But his eyes were still sharp, and his will was unbroken. Around him stood the people who had made this moment possible. Admiral Lee Yuna, who had saved countless lives with her tactical brilliance. Dr. Yoon Heron, whose technologies had given humanity the ability to reach the stars. Colonel Bae Ji-hoon, finally able to rest after liberating 300 worlds. And there were new faces too. Young Kong Minji, 22 years old, the finest pilot in the fleet. She had been a child when the war began. She had grown up in the shadow of the invasion, trained from her earliest years to fight. She had never known a galaxy without war. "The Vaulat are hailing us," Lieutenant Onjisu reported. "Chancellor Morith wishes to negotiate." Admiral Doyen considered for a moment. 2 years ago, he would have refused. The anger and pain of those early days still burned in his heart. 18,000 humans had died in the first battle. Hundreds of thousands more had fallen since then, but he was older now, and perhaps a little wiser. "Put him through," he said. Chancellor Morith appeared on the screen. He looked nothing like the proud, arrogant leader who had sent the first invasion fleet. His crystalline body was dull, cracked in places, aged far beyond his years. His eyes held the hollow look of a being who had watched everything he built crumble to dust. "Admiral Doyan Moreth said, his voice barely a whisper. "You have one. I acknowledge this truth. The Vaulat Empire surrenders to the Alliance." No celebration erupted on the bridge. No cheers. Only silence. "We offer complete capitulation," Moreth continued. "Our military forces will stand down. Our territories will be released. Our government will accept whatever terms you dictate." He paused, and for the first time, his voice cracked. "We ask only that you spare our worlds, our people, our culture. We ask for mercy." Admiral Doyan looked at him for a long moment. Behind him, he could feel the weight of everyone watching. His crew, his allies. The billions of beings across the galaxy who had suffered under Vaulat ruled for thousands of years. They had every right to demand vengeance. Every right to reduce the Vaulat homeworld to ashes. Every right to do to them what they had done to so many others. And Dodgen would be lying if he said the thought did not tempt him. He remembered the first ultimatum, the arrogance, the threats against his children and grandchildren. He remembered every soldier who had died under his command. But he also remembered why they had fought. "Chancellor," he said finally, 2 years ago, your ambassador came to our world and demanded our surrender. He threatened to destroy everything we loved. He gave us no choice." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was soft. "We are giving you one," he gestured to his crew. Around the bridge, screens flickered to life showing the faces of allied commanders. Korathov of the Vorthok, his scarred face unreadable. Chief Scientist Relin of the Malorians. Leaders from a dozen other worlds. "Every species in this fleet was once your victim," Doyan continued. "The Vorthok spent 700 years in chains. The Malorians were forced to build weapons for their own destruction. Every one of them has earned the right to demand your annihilation." He let the words hang in the air. "But that is not what we will." Dumorith stared at him in disbelief. "Humanity spent its entire existence fighting for survival," Doyan said. "We know what it means to be the underdog. We know what it means to face extinction. We know what it means to be afraid." He met the Chancellor's eyes. "And we know that if we destroy you completely, we become exactly what we fought against." Admiral Lee Yuna stepped forward. Her voice was steady, but there was grief in her eyes. "We lost 18,000 people in the first battle. Hundreds of thousands more in the campaign that followed. I have written letters to families who will never see their loved ones again. I have held soldiers as they died. Every one of us has lost someone we loved to this war." She looked at Morith, and there was no hatred in her gaze. Only exhaustion and something like hope. "But we did not fight for revenge. We fought so that no species would ever face what we faced. So that no child would grow up afraid of the sky. So that no mother would have to send her son to war, knowing he might never return." She straightened. "We fought so that we could offer this moment. Not destruction. Not vengeance. A new beginning." Marath was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "You would show us mercy. After everything we have done?" Young Kong Mingi spoke up. She had been silent until now, but her voice cut through the bridge like a blade. "I was 14 when the war began. I watched my city evacuate. I watched my brother die in a training accident, preparing to fight. I have every reason to hate you." She looked at Morith with eyes far older than her years. "But hate is easy. Building something new is hard, and we are not afraid of hard things." The surrender was accepted. In the days and weeks that followed, the galaxy began to transform. Vaulat territories were granted independence. Slave species were freed. Criminals were tried, but the general population was spared. The hegemony that had ruled for 12,000 years was dismantled, piece by piece, and something new rose in its place, a federation. Built not on conquest, but cooperation. Not on fear, but mutual respect. Not on the dominance of one species, but the equality of all. It was not perfect. Nothing ever is. There were conflicts and disagreements and old hatreds that took generations to heal, but it was better than what had come before. Defense Minister Choi Soo-min, now Chancellor of the United Earth Government, gave one final address before her retirement. She was 70 years old, frail and tired, but her voice was strong. When they came for us, she said, they thought we were weak. They thought we would break. They did not understand that humanity's greatest strength was never our technology or our weapons. She paused, and there were tears in her eyes. It was our capacity to hope, to love, to fight for each other, and in the end, to forgive. She looked up at the sky, where ships from 100 worlds now traveled in peace. We did not choose to be warriors, but when war came, we became the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever seen. And when victory came, we chose to be something more. Her final words would be carved into monuments across 1,000 worlds. We chose to be human. Admiral Park Do-yan retired. To a small house by the sea in Korea, he spent his final years tending a garden and watching his grandchildren play. Sometimes, at night, he would look up at the stars and remember all those who had fought beside him. Admiral Leuna became the first human ambassador to the Galactic Federation. She dedicated her life to building bridges between species that had been enemies for millennia. Colonel Bae Ja-hoon wrote a book about his campaigns. He donated all the proceeds to a fund for war orphans regardless of species, and young Kong Min-ji became a teacher. She taught history to children who would never know war. She told them stories of sacrifice and courage and mercy. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it, and the universe would never forget.